You could drive right past Black Hollow and never know it was there. The town isn't marked on most maps anymore. If you follow the old mountain road past Eden's Curve, there's a right turn that doesn't have a sign. Just gravel, just trees. But if you take it and you keep driving for long enough, the woods start to change. The trees bend inwards a little too far. The birds stop making noise. And the wind, it doesn't sound like wind anymore. That's how you know you're close. Black Hollow hasn't been a town for over 40 years. The last census was in 1973, and even that was just a guess. Most people who lived there didn't answer doors. The few who did said the same thing over and over. There's nothing here worth counting. But this story doesn't begin with the town. It begins with the house on the hill above it. The Briarwood Estate. It was built in 1891 by a man named Ephraim Briarwood, a timber baron with money too old to trace and skin so pale it looked like wax. Locals said he never came to town, not even for church. He had everything brought up to the estate: food, furniture, medicine, and eventually children. The estate was a red stone monster tucked into a slope of dead pine trees. 3 stories tall, arched windows, and chimneys that never stopped smoking. There were no neighbors, no paths, just one narrow driveway that curled like a spine through the woods. No one knows who built the house or why the foundations were already dug when Ephraim arrived. But they say the stone wasn't local, that it bled when it rained. By the early 1900s, rumors had started that the Briarwoods weren't just living alone, they were collecting. Between 1904 and 1929, they adopted 12 children, all albino. No birth certificates, no legal papers, just quiet handoffs from orphanages that closed soon after. All of them with pale hair, pale eyes, skin like glass, and all of them dead before their 10th birthday. You won't find their names in any public record. You won't find their graves either. But there are photos, framed portraits found years later in the attic of a neighboring farmhouse. 12 children standing in the exact same pose, in the same hallway, under the same chandelier. Eyes facing the camera, hands at their sides, none of them smiling. But if you look closely, really closely, you'll notice something else. In each picture, one of the children is slightly blurred, not from movement, not from age, but as if they didn't belong there, as if something refused to let them be fully seen. The Briarwoods were never formally accused of anything. They were too quiet, too careful. Their land was private, their records were sealed, and the town, such as it was, didn't ask questions. Some say the children died of sickness. Some say accidents. One old man in town who used to deliver milk up the hill swears he saw one of the girls fall from the 3rd-story balcony. He said she didn't scream, just stared straight ahead until she hit the ground. He was 12 when it happened. He never delivered there again. In time, the death stopped. The adoptions stopped. The town grew quieter, then smaller, then forgotten. And the house? It just sat there, empty but not abandoned. Still warm somehow, still lived in. People who broke in, kids mostly, said the clock still ticked, that the fireplace had embers even when it hadn't snowed in weeks, that if you stood in the upstairs hallway too long, the wallpaper would start to peel, just enough to show the outlines of children's drawings beneath it. But no one ever stayed long, not after dark. There's a reason they called it the House of Pale Light, because sometimes late at night the upper windows would glow, faintly, softly, like candlelight, even after the power was cut, even after the house was condemned. People said it looked like children were still up there, reading or waiting. We found a letter once, buried in the back of a church archive in Ashridge County, dated 1931, signed with the initials M.B., who we now believe was Margaret Briarwood, Ephraim's sister. She never married, never left the house. The letter is short, just a few lines. They were not meant to live long. The blood cannot take too much sun, too much noise, too much time. We were told what to do, and we did it. That should have been enough. But some of them remembered. That letter was never mailed, Most people have forgotten about Black Hollow, or they pretend they never heard of it. But the estate is still there, under the trees, still standing, still watching. The front doors are sealed now, but the attic window is cracked, just slightly, just enough. Some say if you drive by at night and flash your headlights 3 times, a child will wave back from the 3rd floor. I can't tell you if that's true, but I can tell you this. Every one of those 12 children had a name once, had a voice, and whatever happened in that house, it was never just about adoption, never just about loss. It was about something deeper, something the Briarwoods believed they could fix or cure or summon by using children that looked like reflections of light itself. They were trying to make something or stop something, and they failed. Or maybe they didn't. Tonight we open the sealed files, we trace the lineage, we go room by room through what remains of the Briarwood home and ask why those children were chosen, why none of them survived past the age of 9, and why something inside the estate still seems to be waiting for more. Stay with us. This is only the beginning. Ephraim Briarwood was not born in Black Hollow. No one knows exactly where he came from, only that he arrived in 1889, 2 years before the house was finished and just days after a fire gutted the old church on the hill. The records that do exist, marriage certificates, land deeds, birth registries, are too clean, too precise, like they were rewritten or planted. According to those documents, Ephraim was the son of a Union doctor and a Welsh immigrant, a wealthy timber merchant, a quiet philanthropist. But every local we spoke to told a different version of the story. Some said he bought the land from an old widow who spoke only in riddles and kept bones in jars. Others claimed the house wasn't built at all, that it rose overnight after a summer storm that flooded the valley and drowned an entire hunting camp. But the most unsettling tale came from a retired caretaker, Harold Lee, now 92 and still sharp as a blade. He told us, without hesitation, Ephraim Briarwood didn't come to Black Hollow. He returned to it. That land knew his name before any of us did. Ephraim wasn't alone for long. In 1893, his younger sister, Margaret Briarwood, arrived from Europe, thin, distant, always dressed in black. She rarely left the house and was often seen tending the upper rooms with locked doors. Some said she was a nurse. Others whispered she was a midwife trained in continental methods. But one thing was always certain: she kept records, pages and pages of them, written in a language no one could identify. We've managed to recover some of those pages from an estate box sold at auction in 1976. They are filled with repetitive patterns, alchemical symbols, diagrams of human skulls. But the skulls are incomplete. Each one is missing a piece at the back of the head, labeled simply "The Gate." Margaret signed her documents with a crescent moon, always upside down. Then there were the children, 12 in total. 12 pale, silent children, each arriving within weeks of a family funeral. No official adoptions, no court appearances, just new faces in the windows, new names whispered by house staff, and then, eventually, silence again. We only know their names from the attic photographs and the notations scribbled behind them. And those names are strange. Not biblical, not local. Names like Sorrel Haven, Ilian, Kesra Fen. And one child, the 7th, whose name was written only as the Mirror. According to surviving notes, this child never spoke, never aged. They appeared the same in every photo, no matter the year. Same posture, same tilt of the head, same blank eyes. Some believe the Mirror wasn't a child at all, that it was something else entirely, passed off as one. We tracked down a nurse named Miriam Groves, now in her 80s, who claimed she was called to the Briarwood estate in 1939 for a feverish girl named Elian. She stayed for 3 nights. On the last night, she said she saw something impossible. I woke to someone brushing my hair. I thought it was Elian, but it wasn't. It looked like her, only the eyes were all wrong, like the color had been drained out of them, like looking into salt water. I didn't stay for the 4th night. Elian was pronounced dead 2 days later. No official cause was given. Her portrait shows her standing under the house's great chandelier, next to the mirror. Local lore suggests the Briarwoods weren't just adopting children, they were testing them, looking for something in the blood, something in the body. You see, in every case, the children lived for roughly 9 years, then declined quickly. Some became violent, some went silent, some vanished entirely. One was last seen walking into the woods barefoot, clutching a candle that wouldn't stay lit. It wasn't illness, it was something else, something deliberate. And then there's the basement, the so-called sanctum. In 1954, a young man named Callum Reeves broke into the estate on a dare. He and 2 friends made it as far as the lower library before they found the trapdoor hidden beneath a collapsed bookshelf. They opened it and descended into the basement with a flashlight and a camera. Only one of them came back up. Callum's statement to police was brief and incoherent, but one phrase stood out, written in trembling pencil on the back of the police report. "They aren't buried, they're planted." When asked what that meant, he simply replied, "Go down there and tell me they're dead. Go ahead. Listen to the walls." He was institutionalized shortly after. The other 2 boys were never found. The lore of the Briarwoods continues to ripple through Black Hollow like a slow-moving sickness. You'll hear it in the way old women say the name. You'll see it in the way children draw the house without ever being told what it looks like. We spoke to one man who claimed to be descended from the original caretakers of the property. He said something that chilled me far more than any document, photo, or grave. It wasn't about keeping the children. It was about keeping something out. And when they stopped bringing children in, that's when the doors started opening. No Briarwood descendants remain. The bloodline appears to have ended in the late 1960s when the last sibling, a man named Elijah Briarwood, hanged himself in the upstairs observatory. His body was discovered weeks later, though no one reported a smell. He left a note, scrawled on the wall in chalk, barely legible. "They still call to me. But the light hurts now. The light remembers." No body was buried. No funeral was held. Only silence. And the faint sound of something breathing behind the wallpaper. In the next part, we'll explore the escalation. What happened when people started digging, asking questions, trying to rebuild the estate, and why every effort to erase the Briarwoods from history has only made their presence more permanent. Because this wasn't just a family secret. It was a design, and someone, or something, still wants it completed. It didn't start with the fire. But the fire was the first time people paid attention. It was the fall of 1971. The leaves in Black Hollow had turned the color of dried blood, and the Briarwood estate, long silent, long shuttered, suddenly roared back to life. Flames exploded through the upper windows just after midnight, lighting up the valley like a torch. No lightning, no storm, no one inside. At least, that's what the fire report said. But volunteer firefighters from neighboring Ashridge claimed otherwise. One man said he saw movement on the 3rd floor, a child's silhouette pacing calmly behind burning glass. Another swore he heard singing coming from the basement, even as the roof began to collapse. By morning, the estate was still standing, scorched but intact. The fire had spread through the upper floor and licked at the attic, but hadn't touched the foundation, or the basement. When crews opened the cellar door, they found something worse than fire damage. They found blood, dried in concentric rings across the stone floor, each circle precisely 27 inches apart. In the center, a chair, iron, unbolted, empty. There was no explanation, no arrests, just a quiet order to seal the place and forget it. But Black Hollow didn't forget. It never does. That was the first of many attempts to remove the Briarwoods from memory, and the beginning of the town's slow unraveling. The county tried to sell the land in 1974. A development firm from Ohio submitted a bid to tear down the house and build luxury cabins on the hill. The deal closed in the spring. By summer, every executive involved had withdrawn. One died of a stroke at 42. Another went missing on a hiking trip. The lead architect was found in his office, sitting at his desk with his own blueprints burned into his skin. He'd carved the estate into his chest with a compass. Every room, every hallway, and in the basement, where the sanctum should have been, he'd drawn 12 small circles, all empty. The sale was reversed, the house remained. Next came the documentary crew. In 1982, a small group of filmmakers from New York received a private grant to investigate the Briarwood legend. 4 members, a director, a sound engineer, a folklore scholar, and a woman named Clara Kincaid, an archivist who'd grown up just one town over. They spent 6 days inside the house, interviewed locals, recorded over 40 hours of footage. None of it was ever released. Because on the 7th day, Clara was found wandering the Ashridge Turnpike barefoot and bleeding. Her fingernails were missing. She didn't speak for 3 years. When she finally did, she wrote only one sentence on a hospital notepad. "We weren't alone in the film." She never said what she meant, but when the footage was recovered and digitized in the early 2000s, something strange appeared in the logs. In every frame, no matter the angle, there are exactly 13 shadows. Only 4 crew members were present. It wasn't just the house, it was the land, the pattern. In the years after the fire, odd births began to occur throughout the valley. Children born to unrelated families, each with stark white hair, red or gray eyes, and faint marks behind the left ear in the shape of a crescent. Every one of them born in October, and every one of them began drawing the Briarwood estate by age 5, despite never having seen it. 2 died before age 9. 1 went missing on her 8th birthday. The 4th, a boy named Simon, was taken into state custody after reportedly writing in a language no one could translate, a language that matched Margaret Briarwood's recovered notebooks. His drawings grew more elaborate with each passing month. First the house, then the basement, then a series of 12 locked doors, each labeled not with a name, but a number and a sound. We've seen them. One door labeled 1 was written with the sound hush. Another, 7, was marked clink, clink, clink. The rest were smudged. Deliberately. Simon disappeared from foster care at age 9 and was never found. Local authorities tried to demolish the house in 1993. The crew reported that none of their equipment worked near the property. Generators stalled. Lights flickered. Radios picked up a woman's voice, repeating the same phrase in a soft, whispering loop. "We only borrowed the children." They were not ours to keep. After 3 failed attempts, the demolition was canceled. A judge declared the estate historically significant and ordered it preserved, despite having no record of its architectural value. That judge died 3 months later in an apparent suicide. No note was left, but his daughter claims he had been hearing children's laughter through the walls at night. They didn't have children. Then the estate became sealed, not by law, by something older. The doors no longer opened. The windows would not break. One researcher tried for hours with tools, fire, even explosives. Nothing worked. But when he returned home, the same iron doorknob from the estate had replaced the one on his own front door. He removed it. It returned the next morning. That man is now a recluse. He keeps the doorknob buried in a cement-filled well. He says it still turns sometimes. And then came the letter, found in 2015, tucked inside a copy of the Book of Hours donated to a Jesuit monastery, signed by Margaret Briarwood, sealed with wax. It was dated 1899. Inside, only a single passage. They were meant to be vessels. The body is not enough. The mirror cracks. The mirror drinks. When they reach 9, they remember what they were before. That is when they begin to see the 13th who, or what, is the 13th? Was it a child? A spirit? A creation? A god? And why did 12 children across decades all share the same fate? Same age, same decay, same pale light fading behind the eyes. This wasn't coincidence. This was ritual. A system. A design perfected over generations, until something went wrong. Or perhaps it all went exactly right. In the next part, we'll dive deeper into the theories, recovered interviews, and the chilling patterns that suggest the Briarwood children were never meant to survive at all. Because they were never fully alive to begin with. By now, it's clear the Briarwood story doesn't end with tragedy. It begins with intention, a repeated pattern of adoption, decay, and disappearance that spans nearly half a century. Theories about what the Briarwoods were doing range from folklore to forbidden science. And none of them are comforting. One theory, perhaps the oldest, ties the Briarwoods to a lost Appalachian sect called the Pale Choir. The sect believed certain children, especially those born untouched by the sun and absent the pigment of sin, could serve as conduits to ancestral memory. Not reincarnation exactly, but something stranger. A way to restore lost souls into clean vessels. It's worth noting that all 12 Briarwood children were pale, identically so. Then there's the theory from Dr. Ellen Moorer, a retired linguist who studied Margaret Briarwood's notebooks. According to her, the symbols repeatedly translate to variations of the phrase, "The 13th is the key, but only the first 12 can carry the weight." Dr. Moorer believes the Briarwoods were attempting serial possession, a ritual transfer of consciousness into a prepared 13th vessel. Each child served as a fragment of the whole, a stepping stone to perfect incarnation. But something always failed at age 9. Why? We dug deeper. In 1987, a local historian named Roy Carver conducted interviews with 2 surviving Briarwood staff members. One recalled a room at the end of the 3rd floor hall, always locked. No key, no name, just a mirror nailed to the door. When pressed, she said, "It was for the one who didn't sleep, the one who remembered the others." The second staff member, a cook named Hattie Green, claimed she once found 13 bowls set at the dining table, even when only one child was alive. Not every theory is mystical. Some believe the Briarwoods were conducting eugenics-style experiments, tracking rare genetic traits, pushing limits of inherited memory, even attempting to breed out death itself. But that doesn't explain the drawings, or the singing, or why so many outsiders came away with matching nightmares. A white hallway with 12 open doors, and one that never opens. We tried to contact the last living Briarwood relative, a distant cousin named Alma Derry. She refused an interview, but sent us a single typed note. "You're looking in the wrong direction. It wasn't about keeping children, it was about keeping something else out. They weren't adopting, they were sealing." What were they sealing? Why did it take 12? And who, or what, was waiting behind door 13? In our final chapter, we return to the estate, because now, after everything we've learned, we're ready to step inside, and we may not be alone. We arrived just before dusk, 3 of us, myself, my sound engineer, and a local fixer named June, who'd been researching Black Hollow longer than any of us. The town had changed since our last visit. Fewer houses now, fewer people. Some of them wouldn't even speak to us. Others just closed their curtains. But we didn't come for the town this time. We came for the house. We parked just before the tree line. From there, the Briarwood estate sat quietly on its slope, exactly where it had always been, staring through the trees like it had been waiting for something, for someone. The air grew colder as we approached, not in a metaphorical way, literally colder. June's breath came out in short white clouds, even though the car's dash had read 78 degrees less than 5 minutes before. Still, we pressed on. The front gates were gone, twisted into the earth like they'd melted and rehardened. The path was overgrown but still walkable. And when we reached the front door, something strange happened. It was unlocked. No crowbar, no broken latch. It simply swung open, slow and heavy, as if pulled by breath instead of hand. We stepped inside. The house didn't smell like dust or rot, like you'd expect from a place that stood empty for decades. It smelled preserved, like wax, like hospital linens, like someone had just left the room. And maybe they had. The floorboards didn't creak. Our boots made no sound on the carpet. Every object in the foyer was untouched, framed pictures on the walls. An umbrella stand by the staircase, a bowl with 3 keys, 1 brass, 1 silver, and 1 blackened with something that looked like ash. We didn't touch them. To our left, the parlor was dim but not dark. A fireplace that had been cold for years showed the faintest shimmer of heat in the coals. On the mantel sat 12 framed photographs. We knew the faces. The children, each one pale, each one frozen in that same eerily composed posture, arms at sides, unsmiling, eyes almost too clear. But now something was different. Where there had once been a 13th frame, always empty before, just a gap in the lineup, there was now a mirror. Oval, ornate, hanging from a single rusted nail. None of us moved toward it. The basement door was closed, but not locked. As we descended, the temperature dropped another 10 degrees. The air became thick. Still, every step echoed twice, once in the present and once a beat too late, like something below was mimicking our movements. The sanctum was just as the fireman had described it, circular, lined with stone, ringed by dark stains and warped iron sconces. But now it was no longer empty. 12 chairs stood at the room's edges, not arranged casually, placed with ritualistic precision, one between each sconce. Each chair faced inward toward a shallow pit in the center, and in the center of that pit, partially buried in dirt and bone, was a 13th chair. We counted them again, 12 around the edge, 1 in the pit, 13 in total. We began to film, slowly, quietly. Our sound engineer whispered that the mic was picking up whispers, even though none of us were speaking. We played the track back and heard them clearly. 12 voices, repeating the same thing, layered over one another, growing stronger with every loop. We remember the skin, we remember the teeth, we remember the name. We didn't know what it meant. Then the lights cut, all at once. We'd brought battery-powered lanterns, but they flickered like dying candlelight. June screamed once, sharp, involuntary, and pointed toward the far side of the room. One of the chairs had fallen over. We hadn't touched it. No one had. Then another tipped, and another. One by one, the chairs around the ring began to fall. By the time we turned to run, the 13th chair was no longer empty. Something sat there, something pale, small, a child, facing away from us. We didn't speak, couldn't. Every muscle in my body wanted to scream, to run, to tear up the stairs and flee into the trees. But something held us, not physically, nothing touched us. But it felt like our thoughts were being listened to, like the house was waiting to see what we would do next. Then the child stood and turned. It wasn't any of the 12, and yet it was all of them. Eyes too large, hair that shimmered white, even in the dark, skin so translucent it looked like light was leaking through from the inside, and a face that shifted subtly, moment by moment, from one child to another. 1 second, the shape of Elian, then Finn, then the mirror, then something else, something with no face at all. It opened its mouth, no sound. Then everything went black. We don't remember leaving, but we were found, hours later, on the side of the mountain road, muddy, bleeding from our ears, our gear gone, our footage destroyed. Only the audio survived, and even that was corrupted, until the final 30 seconds. In that clip, there is only the sound of slow, labored breathing. And then, faintly, a child's voice. Just one. It says, "They made us to carry it." But it never wanted to leave. Now, we carry you. We don't know what that means, but in the months that followed, each member of the team began experiencing vivid, identical dreams. A hallway of 13 doors. 12 of them open, 1 sealed. Something knocks from behind it. Slowly, rhythmically, every night a little louder. June disappeared in February. The police found her apartment empty, lights on, windows locked from the inside. On her mirror, written in the fog of her own breath, was a single phrase: "We are ready now." And me? I see them. In reflections, in glass, in water. Children that don't belong anywhere I know. Pale, watching, waiting. I haven't looked in a mirror in weeks. I've covered every one. And yet I still see the 13th face when I close my eyes. Always just behind the 12 I thought were real. This isn't folklore. This isn't urban legend. This is a system that was built, a ritual that was designed, a structure that still functions, even now. The Briarwoods didn't just adopt albino children. They harvested them, shaped them, broke them into pieces of something older, something vast, something that was once locked behind a door in the body. And now that door is opening. If this is the last recording I ever make, let it serve as a warning. The 13th was never missing. It was patient. It was watching the pattern repeat over and over until someone finally looked too closely, until someone finally stepped inside the mirror, until someone like me. Because now I see what Margaret wrote in her final letter, the one we thought was just a riddle, the one the church locked away in a sealed envelope. It wasn't a warning, it was a blueprint. 12 lights dim, one never dies. When the skin is thin enough, the eye behind the eye arrives. So if you hear a knock at the mirror, don't answer it. And whatever you do, don't let them see you seeing them, because that's how it starts. Not with a scream, not with a death, but with a reflection that doesn't blink back.